I stood in the shadows of the theater, heart pounding, as the lights dimmed for another performance. Laughter and applause echoed from the stage, but all I could focus on was Mel. My wife, my partner, illuminated by the stage lights, laughing with that damn actor, Lucas. Something felt off, and the feeling gnawed at me like a persistent itch. It was just a few weeks ago that I'd noticed the change in her. Late nights at rehearsals turned into secretive phone calls, whispered conversations, and furtive glances at her phone. My instincts screamed at me, but I ignored them, convincing myself it was just her passion for theater. I'd always supported her dreams, even if they occasionally kept her away from home. But as I watched her now, the way she leaned in closer to Lucas, sharing a private joke, I felt something snap inside me. This wasn't mere friendship. It was something deeper, and I couldn't bear it. My chest tightened, filled with a blend of anger and betrayal. I wanted to confront her, to demand the truth, but something held me back. A darker urge stirred within me, an urge for revenge. Over the next few days, I became a shadow in her life, watching her every move. I collected evidence, photos of their interactions, snippets of conversations from friends. Each new piece solidified my conviction she was cheating on me. I felt like a fool, a victim of my own trust, and that realization twisted in my gut. One evening, I confided in Mark, my closest friend. I think she's seeing someone else. Mark, I've caught her with Lucas. I don't know what to do. He frowned, a look of concern crossing his face. Are you sure? You might be jumping to conclusions. But I was sure. The cold truth washed over me like a wave. I felt lost, trapped in a web of my own emotions, and my anger began to drown out the doubt. Revenge was the only thing that made sense now. That night, I made my decision. I wouldn't confront Mel. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of knowing I was hurt. Instead, I would take action that would make her feel every ounce of pain she'd caused me. I started plotting. The theater community was small, and I knew the director, an ambitious man always on the lookout for gossip. I began to gather my evidence meticulously. I compiled everything, photos of Mel and Lucas together, the messages that hinted at their affair. Each item felt like a weapon, a way to take back control. As the days passed, I became more confident, more certain of my path. I went to a party hosted by the theater, pretending to be carefree as I mingled with familiar faces. Then I spotted the director, casually sipping a drink, his laughter ringing out amidst the crowd. I approached him, feeling a mix of adrenaline and fear. Hey, have you heard about Mel's little escapade with Lucas? I dropped the bait, watching his expression shift from curiosity to concern. Soon, I sent an anonymous email to the director with the damning evidence attached. She doesn't deserve to be on your stage, I wrote, filled with a sense of purpose. I could already imagine the fallout. I was ready for the chaos to unfold, for Mel to face the consequences of her actions. A few days later, I received the news I'd been waiting for. Lucas had been fired. The theater erupted in scandal. Mel was at the center, her reputation crumbling. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and regret, knowing that I'd orchestrated this destruction. When Mel confronted me, tears streaming down her face, I felt the cold grip of guilt creep in. Why, Tom, why would you do this? She pleaded, but I remained stone-faced. The anger pushing away any compassion. I had won, or so I thought. But as the chaos swirled around us, I began to wonder, had I really won anything at all? The days that followed felt surreal. I watched as Mel's world unraveled, and the theater buzzed with whispers about her affair. She was once the star of the stage, and now, she was the subject of ridicule. I felt a pang of something. Was it guilt? But I quickly buried it under layers of anger. I couldn't help but replay the moment she confronted me. Her tear-streaked face was etched in my mind, a painful reminder of the person I used to love. But love felt like a distant memory now, overshadowed by betrayal. I went through the motions of daily life, but every laugh I heard felt like a dagger. One evening, I decided to meet Mark again. I needed to talk to someone who could understand the storm swirling inside me. We met at our usual pub, the dim light and chatter offering some comfort. I didn't expect it to go this far, I admitted, swirling the drink in my hand. I just wanted her to feel the pain she caused me. Mark leaned back, studying me. You've hurt her in ways you can't even imagine, Tom. Is this what you really wanted? I shrugged, the question gnawing at me. I thought it would make me feel better. But now, seeing her like this, I don't know. Maybe it's time to think about forgiveness, he suggested, but the word felt alien to me. Forgiveness? After everything? The following day, I saw Mel in the coffee shop where we used to go together. She sat alone, staring blankly at her cup, her usual spark gone. My heart clenched at the sight. I wanted to walk over, to tell her it would be okay, but the bitterness held me back. Instead, I turned and left, but not before catching snippets of conversations around me. Did you hear about Mel? What a disgrace, one woman said. My anger flared again. She deserved it, didn't she? But somewhere deep inside, a flicker of doubt remained. Later that night, I found myself staring at our wedding photo. We looked so happy, so in love. I traced Mel's face with my finger, memories flooding back, her laughter, our shared dreams. How did we end up here? The thought haunted me. Determined to drown out the guilt, I poured myself a drink and tried to focus on work, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was fundamentally wrong. I had taken the ultimate step, and now, I was living in the wreckage of my own actions. As the scandal grew, so did my isolation. Friends I thought would support me began to distance themselves. I can't believe you did that, one said. What if it were you in her shoes? Their judgment stung, and I felt the walls closing in. One night, I received a text from Mel, a simple message that shattered my resolve. Can we talk? I stared at the screen, my heart racing. The thought of seeing her again filled me with dread and anticipation. Would she even want to talk to me, the man who had betrayed her? Finally, I replied, okay, tomorrow? The next day, I met her at the park where we used to walk. She was already there, her expression unreadable. The air was thick with tension as we faced each other, memories of happier times lurking in the background. Why did you do it, Tom? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. You knew how much this meant to me. I thought I was protecting myself, I replied, each word feeling heavier than the last. I wanted you to feel the hurt you caused me. I thought it would help me heal. But it only made things worse, she said, tears glistening in her eyes. You ruined everything. As I stood there, staring into her eyes, I realized the truth. My actions hadn't just hurt her, they had hollowed me out as well. The bitterness that had fueled me was dissipating, leaving only regret in its wake. I wanted to tell her how sorry I was, but the words caught in my throat. The fight between vengeance and compassion was reaching its breaking point. I stood across from Mel, feeling the weight of my actions pressing down on me. Her eyes were a storm of emotions, hurt, anger, and a flicker of the love we once shared. The park was quiet, the usual chatter of children and joggers muted as we faced our shattered reality. Why didn't you just talk to me? She asked, her voice trembling. I would have listened. We could have worked through this. I swallowed hard, trying to find the right words. I thought I had to protect myself. I didn't want to be vulnerable, and I let my anger take over. The admission felt like a dagger to my own heart. I had let my pride blind me. Mel looked down, her fingers twisting in her lap. You've taken everything from me, Tom. I've lost my job, my friends, everything. I'm being painted as the villain. A knot formed in my stomach. I didn't want it to go this far. I just wanted you to know how it felt to be betrayed. Did it ever occur to you that maybe I was scared? That maybe I made a mistake, but I never meant to hurt you? Her words cut through my defenses, exposing the vulnerability I had tried to bury. I don't know, Mel. I thought you were different. My voice cracked, and I felt the tears threaten to spill. The anger that had fueled me for so long was fading, replaced by an overwhelming sense of loss. We stood in silence, the gravity of the moment hanging between us. I could see the pain etched into her features, and I knew I had to choose, continue down this path of destruction or take a step toward healing. I'm sorry, I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. I should have trusted you. I should have talked to you. Her gaze lifted, searching my eyes. You have no idea how much that means, but it doesn't change what's happened. Can we even fix this? I shook my head, a wave of despair crashing over me. I don't know, but I want to try. I need to try. Mel's expression softened, the walls around her heart beginning to crack. Trying might be all we have left. In that moment, I felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps it wasn't too late. We could start rebuilding from the rubble of our shattered trust. But I knew it wouldn't be easy. I had to face the consequences of my actions, not just for her, but for myself. Over the next few weeks, I reached out to the people I'd alienated. I apologized to friends, to family, and even to the director of the theater. Each conversation was filled with discomfort, but I pressed on. I couldn't change what I had done, but I could own up to it and face the fallout. As for Mel, she needed time to process. We began to meet regularly, talking through our pain and fears. It felt like walking on a tightrope, teetering between hope and despair. Each meeting was a small step forward, but the scars of betrayal still lingered. One afternoon, as we sat on a bench overlooking the park, Mel shared her dreams again, the ones she had almost forgotten in the chaos. I miss acting. It was my passion, but now, I don't know if I can step back on stage without feeling ashamed. I took her hand, squeezing it gently. You shouldn't let anyone take that away from you. You're talented and passionate, and you deserve to pursue what you love. She looked at me, a hint of a smile breaking through the shadows. What if I fail? What if I can't face the audience again? Then you try again, I replied, feeling a surge of determination. I'll be there to support you. We can face it together, no matter what happens. Her eyes glistened, and I could see a flicker of the woman I fell in love with. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope that perhaps we could rebuild, not just our relationship but also our individual selves. But as we made plans to face the future, I knew that the road ahead would be filled with challenges. Trust was a fragile thing, and while I was committed to mending the pieces, I realized it would take time, patience, and a lot of effort on both our parts. The journey wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long while, I felt ready to embark on it together. As the weeks rolled on, Mel and I found ourselves treading a fragile path, each step forward filled with uncertainty. I focused on being supportive, but I could see the shadows of doubt still clouding her eyes. The theater world was unforgiving, and the whispers of betrayal lingered like a dark cloud over her. One evening, as we sat on my couch, she broached the topic of returning to the stage. There's an audition coming up for a new play, she said, her voice steady but laced with apprehension. I think I want to try out, but what if it doesn't go well? What if they don't want me back? I felt a surge of pride mixed with anxiety. You've always been talented, Mel. You deserve to chase your dreams. If this is what you want, I'll be there to cheer you on. Her smile was tentative but genuine, and for a moment, the weight of our past lifted. Yet I could sense her hesitation. The scars of what had happened were still fresh, and the thought of stepping back into the spotlight must have felt like an insurmountable challenge. As the audition day approached, I watched her prepare with a mix of admiration and concern. She practiced monologues late into the night, pouring her heart into every word. Each evening, I would join her, trying to offer encouragement, even as I struggled with my own insecurities. Would she be able to reclaim her place on that stage? Would the audience see her not as the woman who had fallen from grace, but as the passionate actress I knew her to be? The night of the audition arrived, and I could feel the tension in the air as we made our way to the theater. It was the same venue that had once been her sanctuary, now a place tinged with memories of betrayal and judgment. I squeezed her hand as we walked through the lobby, trying to convey my unwavering support. Just remember, you're doing this for you, I said. No matter what happens, I believe in you. She took a deep breath, nodding slowly. I need to remember that. It's time to reclaim my voice. Inside the audition room, I could feel the energy shift. Mel stepped onto the stage, the spotlight bathing her in light. I watched as she transformed, her nerves giving way to the familiar spark that had drawn me to her in the first place. The moment she began her monologue, I held my breath, captivated by her presence. But halfway through, I noticed the judges whispering among themselves. My heart raced as I worried they might not see the raw talent before them. What if they were judging her based on her past rather than her performance? I clenched my fists, willing them to look beyond the scandal and see the woman I loved. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. Mel beamed, but I could see the uncertainty in her eyes as she stepped down. The judges called her in for feedback, and I felt a mixture of pride and dread. After what felt like an eternity, she emerged, her expression unreadable. How did it go? I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. They said I need to work on my confidence, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. But they liked my performance. They want to see me again for callbacks. Relief washed over me, but I could sense the weight of her fears still hanging in the air. That's amazing, Mel. You took the first step. And that's what matters. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I know, but I'm scared. What if I can't get past this? What if they only remember me for the scandal? I took her hands in mine, searching her gaze. You can't control what others think. What matters is how you see yourself. You're not defined by this. You're talented, passionate, and you deserve this chance. As we left the theater, I couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. She was reclaiming her narrative, but I knew it would take more than one audition to heal the wounds we both carried. In the following weeks, as she prepared for the callback, I focused on being her anchor. We spent evenings practicing together, and I watched as her confidence slowly began to return. Each small victory felt monumental, but deep down, I understood that the real challenge lay in rebuilding our trust. One night, as we sat together, I opened up about my own fears. I'm still struggling with what I did, Mel. I hurt you, and I don't know if I can fully make it right. She turned to me, her expression softening. We're both navigating this together, Tom. It won't be easy, but as long as we're honest with each other, we have a chance. Her words resonated with me, and I realized that this journey was as much about healing myself as it was about healing our relationship. As we prepared for the next chapter, I vowed to stand by her side, no matter what obstacles lay ahead. Together, we would face the uncertainties, rebuilding our lives one step at a time. As the callback day approached, I could feel the tension mounting in the air. Mel had been preparing diligently, but with each passing day, the weight of her past seemed to press down harder on her shoulders. I watched as she practiced in front of the mirror, her expression shifting between determination and doubt. Are you ready? I asked one evening as she ran through her lines for what felt like the 100th time. She paused, looking at her reflection. I don't know, Tom. What if they still see me as the woman who was caught in a scandal? What if they don't believe I can do this? Mel, you have to believe in yourself, I replied, stepping closer. You've worked so hard. This is your chance to show them who you really are. She nodded, but the fear lingered in her eyes. I wished I could take it all away, the whispers, the judgment, the scars. But I knew that all I could do was support her through this tumultuous time. The day of the callback arrived, and we made our way to the theater. The atmosphere was electric, filled with other hopefuls preparing to showcase their talents. I could see the nervous energy radiating from Mel, and I squeezed her hand tightly, trying to instill a sense of calm. I'll be right here, waiting for you, I said softly as she stepped into the audition room. Watching her walk away felt like a weight had settled in my chest. Time seemed to stretch on endlessly as I waited. I could hear snippets of laughter and applause from the other audition rooms, but my heart was with Mel. After what felt like hours, she emerged, her face a mixture of relief and uncertainty. How did it go? I asked, my heart racing. I don't know, she said, her voice shaky. They liked my reading, but they didn't give me a clear answer. I think they're still unsure. I could see the disappointment creeping in, and I felt a surge of frustration. Mel, you did your best. That's what matters. You showed them your talent. She sighed, rubbing her temples. But what if it's not enough? What if they see me as a risk? I pulled her close, wrapping my arms around her. You're not a risk. You're a remarkable actress, and anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve you. You'll find your place again. As the days passed, the waiting game became agonizing. Mel was on edge, her mood swinging between hope and despair. I tried to keep the atmosphere light, suggesting movie nights and walks in the park, but the weight of uncertainty loomed over us. Then, a few days later, the email we had both been dreading arrived. Mel opened it with trembling hands, her breath hitching as she read the words on the screen. I watched as her face fell, the light in her eyes dimming. I didn't get it, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. They chose someone else. My heart sank for her. I stepped forward, pulling her into a tight embrace. I'm so sorry, Mel. I know how much this meant to you. She held on to me, the tears spilling over. I thought this was my chance to start over. To prove that I could rise above everything. We'll find another opportunity. This doesn't define you, I reassured her. But I could see the hurt etched deep in her features. In the days that followed, I tried to lift her spirits, but the disappointment hung heavy in the air. Mel withdrew, spending more time in solitude, and I struggled to break through the walls she had built around herself. One evening, I found her sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the TV. Mel, I said gently, let's talk. I know you're hurting, but you can't let this consume you. She looked at me, and for a moment, the vulnerability in her eyes cut through the silence. I don't know what to do, Tom. I feel lost. I thought I could reclaim my passion, but now, I don't know if I can even face the stage again. I sat beside her, taking her hand. You've been through so much. It's okay to feel lost. But I believe in you, and I know you can find your way back. You just need to take it one step at a time. She nodded slowly, tears brimming in her eyes. I want to believe that, but I'm scared of failing again. Failure is part of the journey. It doesn't diminish your talent or your worth. I said firmly. You have so much to offer. Let's work on this together, no matter how long it takes. That night, we talked long into the evening, sharing our fears and hopes. It was a cathartic release, and I could see the first hints of her spirit beginning to resurface. Though the road ahead was uncertain, we vowed to support each other, to face the challenges hand in hand. With time, Mel began to pick herself up. She immersed herself in acting classes and community theater, rediscovering her love for the craft away from the harsh spotlight of professional auditions. I watched as her passion reignited, and slowly, the shadows began to lift. We still had a long way to go, but in that moment, I felt a renewed sense of hope. Together, we would navigate this winding path, one step at a time, and perhaps, just perhaps, find a way to rebuild what had been lost. As the weeks passed, I watched Mel rediscover her passion for acting, and it filled me with a sense of hope I hadn't felt in a long time. She enrolled in an acting workshop that focused on improvisation and character work. The first time she came home excited after class, I felt a spark reignite in her. "Tom, you won't believe it. We did this exercise where we had to embody different characters, and I felt alive again." Her eyes sparkled, and I couldn't help but smile at her enthusiasm. "That's amazing, Mel. I knew you'd find your way back," I replied, wrapping my arms around her. But amidst her growing excitement, I could sense that the shadows of doubt still lingered. Each time she received feedback, I saw her internal struggle play out. The remnants of past hurt creeping back in. I knew she was building a foundation, but I also understood it would take time to fully regain her confidence. One evening, as we sat together reviewing her notes from class, she looked up at me, her expression turning serious. "What if I never make it back to the professional stage? What if I'm just stuck doing this for fun?" "Mel," I said gently, "what's important is that you're enjoying what you're doing. Acting should be about passion, not just a paycheck. The stage doesn't define you, your talent does." She nodded, but her eyes betrayed her uncertainty. I wanted to take her fears away, but I knew it was something she had to confront herself. A few weeks later, the workshop was preparing for a showcase performance, and Mel was selected to present a scene she had worked on. I could see the mixture of excitement and anxiety in her demeanor as she rehearsed. The moment she stepped onto that stage, everything changed. She transformed, shedding her insecurities like a second skin. I watched in awe as she brought her character to life, fully immersing herself in the moment. The audience responded with laughter and applause, and in that instant, I realized how far she had come. After the performance, she rushed off the stage, a radiant smile lighting up her face. "Did you see that? They loved it." Her laughter was infectious, and I couldn't help but share in her joy. "You were incredible, Mel. That's the passion I've been waiting to see," I replied, my heart swelling with pride. But even as we celebrated, I could see a flicker of doubt behind her eyes. What if this was just a fluke? What if they don't want to see me again? I took her hands, grounding her. "It wasn't a fluke. You've put in the hard work, and you deserve to feel proud of this moment. You've earned it." Her smile faltered slightly, and I sensed the internal battle still raging within her. "I just don't want to get my hopes up. I'm scared of the fall." The fear in her voice struck a chord deep within me. I understood that rebuilding trust and self-worth was a complex journey. "Then let's keep moving forward together," I suggested. "Focus on the next step, not the fall. You've got this." The weeks turned into months, and Mel continued to immerse herself in acting. The showcase had rekindled her passion, and I could see the change in her. She was more vibrant, more engaged with life. But I was also aware that we had yet to confront the full weight of our past. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching a movie, I felt a sudden urge to address the elephant in the room. "Mel, I think we need to talk about everything that happened. I want to make sure we're both on the same page." She turned to me, surprise evident on her face. "What do you mean?" "I mean, the affair, the betrayal, and everything that followed. I think we need to process it together, to understand how it affected us both." Her expression shifted, and I could see her processing my words. "I've tried to move on, but maybe we do need to talk about it. It's still there, lurking in the background." As we began to discuss the events that had transpired, I could feel the weight of the conversation. We shared our feelings of hurt, betrayal, and the longing for forgiveness. It was difficult, and emotions ran high, but it felt necessary. Each word helped to untangle the mess we had created, and slowly, I could see the walls between us beginning to crumble. I know I hurt you deeply, and I'm truly sorry, I admitted, my voice filled with sincerity. I let my anger dictate my actions, and I want to make it right. Mel looked at me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I felt lost, Tom. I thought I'd lost everything. But talking about this, it's like a weight is being lifted. By the time we finished, we were both emotionally exhausted but relieved. It felt like we had taken a significant step toward healing, finally able to acknowledge the scars without letting them define our relationship. As we curled up together on the couch, I felt a renewed sense of hope. We had faced the darkness together and emerged stronger. I knew the road ahead would still be filled with challenges, but now, we were ready to tackle them as partners, hand in hand. As the winter chill settled over the city, Mel and I found ourselves in a rhythm of healing and growth. The holidays approached, a time typically filled with joy, but this year felt different. The memories of our struggles still lingered, casting a shadow over what should have been a festive season. One evening, we decided to decorate the apartment together. I hung twinkling lights while Mel carefully placed ornaments on the tree, her expression a mix of nostalgia and hope. You know, last year felt like a blur, she said, arranging a glass ornament delicately. I couldn't even think about the holidays. I nodded, recalling the emotional turmoil we had endured. This year is different. We're different. Yes, but I still feel that ache sometimes, she admitted, glancing at me. It's like the wounds are healing. But the scars remain. I understood what she meant. The past year had been a roller coaster of emotions, and while we were making progress, the shadows of betrayal still haunted us. It's okay to feel that way. It's part of the process. We've come so far together. As the days went by, the festive spirit began to seep into our home. We spent evenings baking cookies, watching old holiday movies, and sharing laughter that felt more genuine than it had in a long time. Yet, amid the joy, I sensed a lingering tension in Mel. A few days before Christmas, she sat on the couch, staring out the window with a distant expression. I approached her, concerned. What's on your mind? I don't know, Tom. I want everything to be perfect. But I keep worrying about what happens after the holidays. What if I fall back into old patterns? Then we'll face it together, I reassured her, sitting beside her and taking her hand. We've built a strong foundation, and I believe we can handle whatever comes our way. She leaned into me, finding comfort in my presence. You always know how to calm my fears. But I still need to confront what happened. I can't let it control me. I'm here for you, I said, wrapping my arm around her. Whenever you're ready to talk, we can do it together. The next day, we decided to take a walk in the nearby park, hoping the fresh air would clear our minds. The snow crunched under our boots as we strolled hand in hand, and for a moment, it felt like the world had slowed down just for us. The trees were adorned with snow, and the beauty of the winter landscape momentarily lifted our spirits. Look at that, Mel said, pointing to a group of children building a snowman. They seemed so carefree. I miss that feeling. It's not lost, I replied. You can find it again. We just have to be willing to embrace it. As we continued walking, Mel suddenly stopped. Can we talk about the affair again? I need to confront it one more time. I took a deep breath, sensing the weight of the conversation ahead. Of course, I'm ready. We found a bench and sat down, the cold air swirling around us. I've been thinking about the moment I betrayed you, she began, her voice steady but emotional. It was a terrible mistake, and I need to understand why it happened. I think we both got lost, I said gently. We were caught up in our own insecurities and fears. It blinded us to what really mattered. She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. I felt trapped in my own world, and instead of coming to you, I sought validation elsewhere. It was wrong, and I can't change it. I know, I replied. And I hurt you too. My reaction only pushed you further away. We were both at fault, but we're learning. I want to forgive myself, she said, her voice breaking. But I'm terrified I'll never fully heal from this. I squeezed her hand tightly. You will. It's a journey, and we'll navigate it together. It's about taking those small steps forward. After a moment of silence, she wiped her tears and took a deep breath. Thank you for being so patient with me. I don't deserve it, but it means the world. You do deserve it, Mel. We both do. We're in this together, and that's what matters. As we sat on the bench, I felt a shift in the air. It was as if we had finally shed some of the weight we had been carrying. Mel's heart felt lighter, and I could see the flicker of hope returning to her eyes. The holidays came, filled with laughter and shared moments that reminded us of the love we had fought to reclaim. On Christmas morning, we exchanged gifts, each one carefully chosen to reflect the journey we had been on. When Mel opened her gift, a handmade scrapbook filled with memories of our happiest moments, she gasped. "This is beautiful, Tom. I can't believe you did this. I wanted you to remember the love we have, despite everything we've been through. It's part of our story." She smiled through her tears, and in that moment, I knew we were on the right path. The scars may remain, but they were a testament to our strength and resilience. As the new year approached, we found ourselves looking forward with renewed hope. We had faced our demons, and while the journey was ongoing, we were finally ready to embrace the future together, hand in hand. As the new year unfolded, Mel and I felt a fresh sense of purpose. We had faced our past together, and with each day, our connection deepened. But with this newfound hope came a reminder of the challenges ahead. Mel's decision to return to the theater loomed larger than ever. One evening, she sat down with a determined expression. "Tom, I want to audition for a local production. It's a small role, but it feels like a step in the right direction." I could see the excitement in her eyes, but I also sensed the anxiety simmering beneath the surface. "That sounds great. What's the play about?" "It's a contemporary piece about love and forgiveness," she explained. "The lead character goes through a similar journey to what we've experienced." "Sounds like it could be cathartic for you," I replied, feeling a swell of pride. "When's the audition?" "Next week," she said, biting her lip. "I'm excited but terrified. Just remember, Mel, you've come so far. No matter what happens, I'm proud of you for taking this step." The days leading up to the audition were a mix of preparation and self-doubt. Mel practiced her lines obsessively, and I could see her oscillating between confidence and fear. I tried to be a steady presence, but I too felt the weight of our past lingering in the background. On the day of the audition, we arrived at the theater, the familiar nerves bubbling up. The space was filled with hopeful actors, each one lost in their own world. As Mel warmed up, I watched her, noticing the flicker of anxiety in her movements. "Are you ready?" I asked, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. She took a deep breath, her eyes locking onto mine. "I think so. I just need to remember why I'm doing this." "Exactly. You're not just acting, you're sharing a piece of your soul." I encouraged her. When her name was called, I felt a rush of pride mixed with apprehension. She stepped onto the stage, and I could see the transition happen, the moment she embraced her character, shedding her insecurities like a coat. I leaned forward, holding my breath, as she delivered her lines with raw emotion. But as the audition went on, I noticed the judges whispering to each other, their expressions serious. My heart raced, I could sense Mel's unease. She finished her scene, and the applause that followed was thunderous, but doubt lingered in the air. When she returned to me, her face was flushed with a mix of triumph and anxiety. "How did it go?" I asked, trying to read her expression. "I don't know. They seemed interested, but I couldn't tell if they were impressed or just being polite." "Regardless, you poured your heart into that performance, and that's what counts," I reassured her. The waiting game began again. We spent the next few days anxiously anticipating the callback list. Each time my phone buzzed, my heart raced. Finally, on a Friday afternoon, an email arrived. "Mel, it's here," I shouted, pulling her into the living room. She took the laptop from me, her hands trembling as she opened the email. Her face shifted from anticipation to shock. I got a callback." Joy surged through me. "That's amazing. I knew you could do it." But as we celebrated, I noticed the shadow of doubt flicker across her face. "I just don't want to get my hopes up too high. Let's take this one step at a time. You've earned this," I said, hoping to soothe her anxiety. As the callback approached, Mel dove headfirst into rehearsals, and I found myself swept up in her excitement. Yet, beneath the surface, I could sense the fragility of her confidence. She was pushing herself, but I worried about the toll it might take. On the night of the callback, I could hardly contain my excitement. We arrived at the theater, the familiar buzz of energy enveloping us. Mel was focused, her determination palpable as she prepped for her scene. "Just be yourself," I whispered, hoping to quell any lingering fears. As she stepped onto the stage, I held my breath. This time, the judges seemed more engaged. nodding along as Mel poured herself into her character. When she finished, the applause felt different, stronger, more genuine. After her performance, Mel walked off the stage, a mix of exhilaration and exhaustion on her face. "That felt incredible," she exclaimed. "I could see it. They loved you," I said, feeling a rush of pride. But as we left the theater, I sensed a shift. Mel's excitement began to ebb, replaced by a familiar anxiety. What if I don't get the role? What if they don't see me as capable? I took her hands, grounding her. "You can't control what they decide, but you've done everything you could. You showed them your passion and talent. That's what matters." The days that followed were a whirlwind of anticipation and anxiety. Mel's mood fluctuated, and I found myself walking a tightrope of support, trying to reassure her while respecting her space. I reminded her of her strength and resilience, but I could see the old scars still whispering doubts in her mind. Finally, the day arrived for the final casting decisions to be posted. We sat on the couch, Mel's fingers anxiously tapping against her knee. "I'm so nervous," she admitted. "Just breathe, Mel. No matter the outcome, you've already won by taking this step," I said, rubbing her back gently. When the clock struck 5, we both stared at the computer. The email from the theater center still unopened. "Here goes nothing," Mel murmured, clicking it open. As she read the results, silence enveloped the room. I watched her face as emotions flickered across it, confusion, disbelief, and then a bright smile. "I got the role. I got the role," she shouted, her voice filled with joy. I jumped up, wrapping her in a tight embrace. "You did it. I'm so proud of you." As we celebrated, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. She had faced her fears, pushed through the doubts, and emerged victorious. But beneath the surface, I knew this was just the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter filled with both excitement and the potential for challenges ahead. In that moment of joy, I also recognized the importance of continuing to support each other as we navigated this new terrain. We were embarking on a journey, one that would test our resolve but also solidify our bond. Together, we would face whatever came next, hand in hand. As rehearsals for the play began, Mel transformed into a whirlwind of creativity and energy. She poured herself into her role, immersing herself in the character's journey of love and redemption. Watching her embrace this new chapter filled me with pride, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that the pressures of the theater might unearth old insecurities. One evening, as we drove home after a long rehearsal, I noticed her silence. "Hey, what's on your mind?" I asked, glancing at her profile illuminated by the streetlights. "I don't know, Tom. I'm just worried about the performance. What if I mess up? What if I forget my lines?" Her voice wavered with anxiety. "Mel, you're doing fantastic. You've worked so hard, and the director believes in you. You just need to trust yourself," I replied, hoping to instill confidence. "I know, but it's so different from the workshops. The stakes feel higher. What if the audience sees me as just the woman who had an affair?" Her vulnerability struck me, a reminder of how deeply the past still affected her. "Let them see you as the incredible actress you are. This is your chance to show everyone how far you've come," I said firmly. As the weeks passed, I made a point to attend every rehearsal, cheering her on from the sidelines. Each time Mel stepped onto that stage, she lit up, losing herself in the performance. But I also noticed her slipping into moments of self-doubt, especially after a rough rehearsal or critical feedback from the director. One night, after a particularly challenging rehearsal, Mel returned home, her shoulders slumped. "I don't think I can do this, Tom. I feel like I'm letting everyone down," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I wrapped my arms around her, pulling her close. "You're not letting anyone down. Everyone has rough days, even the best actors. It's part of the process. But I feel like I'm just not good enough. What if they regret casting me?" Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, and I could feel her pain. "Listen to me. You've already proven so much to yourself. This isn't just about the play, it's about reclaiming your passion. You're doing this for you," I said, hoping to shift her perspective. In the days leading up to the performance, Mel worked hard to bolster her confidence. We set aside time each evening to practice her lines, but she also began to embrace mindfulness techniques, finding solace in meditation and breathing exercises. I watched her resilience blossom, and I felt hopeful that she could overcome her fears. On opening night, the theater buzzed with anticipation. The energy in the air was electric, and I could sense Mel's nerves. As she got ready backstage, I placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You're going to be amazing. Just remember to breathe and enjoy it. She nodded, her eyes wide with emotion. I'm scared, Tom. What if I forget everything? Then you improvise. Just trust your instincts, I encouraged, my heart swelling with pride for her bravery. As the curtain rose, I held my breath, watching the stage. Mel entered, and the transformation was instant. The character came alive in her, and I could see the audience hanging on her every word. Each line was delivered with authenticity and depth, and I felt tears prick at my eyes as I witnessed her passion. Halfway through the performance, however, a moment of silence fell when she stumbled over a line. My heart sank, but in that instant, I saw her gather herself. Instead of panicking, she laughed it off, cleverly improvising her way back on track. The audience erupted in applause, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. After the show, the cast and crew gathered to celebrate, the atmosphere filled with laughter and camaraderie. Mel beamed, her earlier doubts washed away by the success of the night. I can't believe I did it, she exclaimed, her joy infectious. You were incredible. I knew you had it in you, I replied, pulling her into a tight hug. As the night wore on, I noticed a few people whispering about Mel, their eyes filled with admiration. It felt surreal to see her recognized for her talent rather than her past mistakes. I watched her soak it all in, the joy radiating from her like a beacon. But later that night, as we lay in bed, I could see the shadows creeping back into her thoughts. Tom, what if this was just a fluke? What if I can't keep this up? I turned to her, wrapping my arms around her protectively. You are not a fluke, Mel. This is just the beginning. You've worked so hard to get here, and you deserve every bit of this success. She sighed, the uncertainty still lingering. I just don't want to disappoint anyone again. Then let's focus on you and your journey, not anyone else's expectations. You've come so far. This is about reclaiming your passion, remember? As she nestled into my embrace, I felt a sense of hope. We were still navigating the complexities of her past, but she was learning to embrace her future, one performance at a time. The road ahead might still be fraught with challenges, but together, we would face whatever came our way, stronger than ever. The excitement of opening night quickly transformed into a whirlwind of rehearsals and performances. Mel was thriving in her role, the applause filling the theater, fueling her passion. I could see the transformation not only in her acting but also in her spirit. Each night, she emerged more confident, shedding the weight of her past like a second skin. Yet, with success came new challenges. Mel began to navigate the complexities of the theater world, where the pressure to perform was relentless. While she embraced the opportunities, I could see her teetering on the edge of exhaustion. One afternoon, we met for lunch at a cozy cafe after her rehearsal. As she stirred her coffee, her brow furrowed with worry. I feel like I'm juggling too much, Tom. I want to give my best performance, but it's wearing me down. Have you talked to the director about it? Maybe you can scale back a bit? I suggested, hoping to ease her burden. I don't want to seem ungrateful or incapable. This is such a huge opportunity, and I can't let anyone down, she replied, her voice tinged with anxiety. Mel, taking care of yourself is just as important as the performance. You can't pour from an empty cup, I reminded her gently. She sighed, resting her head in her hands. I know you're right, but I don't want to be seen as someone who can't handle it. The conversation lingered in the air, both of us knowing she needed to set boundaries but hesitant to voice it. As she finished her meal, I could see the conflict etched on her face. That evening, I accompanied her to the theater, determined to support her in whatever way I could. Backstage, the energy was electric as the cast prepared for another show. I watched Mel interact with her fellow actors, her laughter echoing through the halls. But behind her bright smile, I sensed a growing tension. As the performance unfolded, I held my breath during her scenes. She was captivating, her character's journey resonating deeply with the audience. Yet, I noticed her fatigue creeping in. By the end of the night, she seemed more drained than usual. After the curtain fell, I approached her. You were amazing, but I can see you're struggling. Have you thought about taking a night off? I can't do that. They're counting on me, she replied, but her eyes betrayed her exhaustion. Maybe just one night? It could help you recharge, I pressed, wanting her to see the value in self-care. I'll think about it, she said, but the uncertainty lingered in her voice. The following week, the tension escalated. Mel's rehearsals became increasingly intense, and I noticed her temper fraying. One evening, she snapped at a cast member during a scene, the sharpness in her voice echoing through the theater. The energy shifted, and I felt the weight of her pressure in the air. Later that night, I confronted her gently. "You're under so much stress, Mel. It's okay to admit it. I'm not stressed. I'm just trying to make this work." She fired back, the frustration bubbling over. I stepped back, startled by her reaction. "I'm not trying to upset you. I just want to help. I don't need help. I just need to get through this," she shouted, her voice breaking. Seeing her so upset made my heart ache. "You're pushing yourself too hard. I'm worried about you." After a long pause, her shoulders slumped, and the anger faded. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to take it out on you. I just feel so much pressure right now. Let's talk about it. I'm here for you, no matter what," I said, my voice softening. That night, we sat together, and she finally let her guard down. "I thought I could handle everything, but I'm scared of failing. What if they decide I'm not worth it?" "Mel, you're not defined by this role. You're an incredible person and actress, and this doesn't determine your worth," I reassured her. "I know that logically, but the fear is so real," she admitted, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Then let's face it together. If you need to take a step back, do it. It's okay to prioritize your well-being," I said, hoping to alleviate some of her burden. After a moment, she nodded slowly. "Maybe I do need to take a night off. I just want to be good at this." "You already are. And taking care of yourself is part of being good," I replied, my heart swelling with hope. The next day, she made the difficult decision to skip a rehearsal, a small act of self-preservation. We spent the evening relaxing at home, enjoying a quiet dinner and watching old movies. The respite was a balm for both of us, and I could see her beginning to breathe again. As the days passed, Mel found a renewed sense of balance. She learned to communicate her needs to the director and her castmates, fostering an environment of support. I watched her reclaim her confidence, her laughter ringing out once more. The following performance was one of the best yet. Mel lit up the stage, her energy infectious, and the audience was captivated. After the show, the cast celebrated, and I could see her soaking in the praise, the earlier doubts fading into the background. Later that night, as we lay in bed, I felt a wave of relief. "You were incredible tonight. You really found your rhythm. I couldn't have done it without you," she replied, resting her head against my shoulder. "Thank you for reminding me that it's okay to take care of myself. Always. I'll be here, cheering you on," I said, wrapping my arms around her. In that moment, I realized we had both grown through this experience. Mel was learning to navigate her fears, and I was learning to support her without losing myself in her struggles. Together, we were stronger, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, one performance at a time. As the weeks progressed, Mel's confidence blossomed alongside her performances. The theater buzzed with excitement, and the reviews began to pour in, praising her talent and emotional depth. Yet, as she thrived, I noticed subtle shifts in her demeanor. Despite her success, there was an undercurrent of anxiety that seemed to shadow her. One evening, after a particularly exhilarating performance, we found ourselves in a small celebration with the cast. Laughter filled the air, and Mel was the life of the party. I watched her dance and joke, the glow of triumph lighting up her face. But when the crowd began to thin, I caught her staring off into the distance, her smile fading. "Hey, you okay?" I asked, moving closer to her. "Just tired," she replied, but her eyes told a different story. "It's a lot to take in, you know? I never expected this kind of attention." "I get that, but you're handling it so well. You've earned every bit of this recognition," I encouraged. She nodded, but I could see the worry flickering beneath the surface. "What if it's too much? What if I can't keep up this momentum?" "Mel, this is a journey. It's okay to have ups and downs. Just remember to lean on your friends and me when it gets tough," I reminded her gently. After that night, I noticed she began to withdraw a bit. She skipped a few social gatherings, opting to spend more time alone in her thoughts. I worried that the pressure was beginning to overwhelm her, but every time I brought it up, she brushed it off. "I'm fine, Tom. I just need some time to process everything," she insisted, but the unease in her voice was hard to ignore. One afternoon, while she was rehearsing, I decided to surprise her with a visit. I brought her favorite coffee and a little treat, hoping to brighten her day. As I entered the theater, I found her in a corner, practicing her lines but looking distant. "Hey, I thought you could use a pick-me-up," I said, handing her the coffee. Her face lit up momentarily, but the smile quickly faded. "Thanks, I really appreciate it. You seem a bit off. Is everything okay? I asked, concern creeping into my voice. I'm just trying to focus, she replied, her tone evasive. There's a lot at stake, and I want to make sure I don't let anyone down. Mel, you're not going to let anyone down. You're doing amazing work. You need to take care of yourself too, I urged. I know. I don't want to disappoint anyone. I don't want them to think I'm a fluke, she admitted, the vulnerability in her voice piercing my heart. Listen to me. You're not a fluke. You're talented and deserving of this. You've worked hard, and you're allowed to enjoy your success, I said firmly. She sighed, running a hand through her hair. It's hard to enjoy it when I feel this pressure. Then let's talk about it. What can I do to help? I asked, my heart racing with worry. I don't know, Tom. I just need to figure things out on my own, she replied, but I could see the strain in her eyes. Just remember, you don't have to go through this alone, I said softly, hoping to reach her. That night, as we lay in bed, I could sense the tension in her body. You've been quiet since the party. I'm worried about you, I admitted. I'm just processing, she replied, staring at the ceiling. Processing what? Your success? Your fears? I pressed gently. Both, I guess. I'm scared of losing it all, scared that this might be a short-lived moment, she finally confessed, her voice trembling. It's okay to be scared. But you can't let that fear dictate your actions. You've come so far, Mel. Embrace this moment, I encouraged. She turned to me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I want to, but I don't know how. We'll figure it out together. You're not alone in this, I promised, pulling her into a comforting embrace. The next day, Mel made a decision. She called a meeting with her director and castmates, sharing her feelings and acknowledging the pressure she had been under. I watched her transform, reclaiming her voice and asserting her needs. That evening, we went for a walk in the park, the crisp air refreshing and invigorating. I feel lighter, she said, a hint of relief in her tone. Talking about it made such a difference. I'm proud of you for speaking up. That takes strength, I replied, my heart swelling with admiration. Thank you for being there for me, even when I tried to push you away, she said, squeezing my hand. Always. You mean the world to me, Mel. I want to see you shine, I replied. As we walked hand in hand, I realized that this journey was not just about her success on stage. It was about embracing vulnerability, overcoming fears, and understanding the importance of community and support. Together, we were navigating the complexities of life and love, one step at a time, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The buzz surrounding Mel's performance continued to grow, culminating in a gala night where critics, producers, and theater enthusiasts gathered to celebrate the play's success. As the date approached, the excitement was palpable, but I could see Mel grappling with a mixture of thrill and anxiety. The stakes felt higher than ever, and the pressure began to mount. On the day of the gala, I noticed her pacing around our apartment, rehearsing lines under her breath. Mel, you're going to be amazing tonight. I reassured her, trying to keep the mood light. I know, but it feels different. It's not just another performance. What if I trip or forget my lines in front of all those people? She fretted, her hands wringing together. Even if that happens, you'll handle it like you always do. You've got this, I said, pulling her into a comforting embrace. Just breathe. The theater was transformed for the event, the stage adorned with elegant decorations and the atmosphere buzzing with anticipation. As the guests began to fill the seats, I watched Mel backstage, her eyes darting around as if searching for a way to escape the spotlight. Mel, just remember, they're here to celebrate you, I reminded her, hoping to bolster her confidence. She took a deep breath, nodding slowly. I just want to make a good impression, she admitted. As the performance began, I felt a swell of pride watching her take the stage. Each movement, each line delivered with grace and emotion captivated the audience. However, I could see the flicker of doubt in her eyes whenever she glanced off stage, as if the fear of judgment loomed just beyond the lights. During the intermission, I found her in the green room, her face pale. Are you okay? I asked, concern etching my features. I feel like I'm about to implode, she confessed, running her fingers through her hair. What if I mess up? I can't bear the thought of disappointing everyone tonight. Mel, listen, you've worked so hard for this moment. Remember the joy you found in performing? Channel that. This isn't just about the critics, it's about sharing your passion, I encouraged, hoping to ignite that spark within her. I'll try, she said, though her voice trembled with uncertainty. The second act began, and Mel took her place on stage once more. This time, I could see her fighting against the anxiety, tapping into the character's strength. The audience was enraptured, and for a moment, I felt that familiar thrill I'd experienced when she first stepped into the spotlight. But as the act progressed, disaster struck. Midway through an emotional scene, Mel stumbled over her words, her voice faltering as her eyes widened in panic. My heart raced as I watched her struggle to regain her composure. The audience fell silent, tension thick in the air. In that moment, something shifted within her. Instead of retreating into herself, she took a deep breath, laughed lightly, and improvised her way through the moment. The audience responded with laughter and applause. And I could see her relax slightly, the tension easing from her shoulders. As the curtain fell and the applause roared, Mel stood on stage, tears of relief and joy glistening in her eyes. She had conquered not just the performance but her fears. I rushed backstage, enveloping her in a tight hug. "You were incredible. You turned it around. I'm so proud of you," I exclaimed, my heart pounding with excitement. "I was terrified, but I just let go," she said, her smile radiant. I finally remembered why I loved this. The celebration that followed was electrifying. Mel was showered with compliments and congratulations from her castmates and guests alike. For the first time in weeks, I saw her truly reveling in the attention, the anxiety that had haunted her dissipating into the night. Later, as the evening wound down, we found a quiet moment together. "Thank you for believing in me, Tom. I don't know how I would have gotten through it without your support," she said, her eyes shining with gratitude. "I'll always believe in you, Mel. You've shown me that you're not just an amazing actress, you're also incredibly resilient," I replied, feeling a swell of affection. "Tonight was a turning point for me," she said, leaning against me. "I think I can finally let go of the fear of failure." "That's the spirit. This is just the beginning," I said, wrapping my arms around her. As we walked out into the cool night air, the stars twinkling above us, I felt a profound sense of hope for our future. We had faced obstacles and insecurities, but together we were learning to embrace our paths, supporting each other through every challenge. Mel's journey was far from over, but tonight marked a significant step forward, and I was excited to see where it would lead us both. In the weeks that followed the gala, Mel's star continued to rise. Invitations poured in for interviews, and she was featured in local magazines. It was a whirlwind, and while she basked in the glow of success, I noticed a new layer of stress creeping in. The attention was intoxicating, but it also meant that scrutiny had increased, and she found herself constantly on edge. One evening, after a long day filled with media appearances, Mel returned home looking exhausted. "I feel like I'm in a fishbowl," she sighed, collapsing onto the couch. "Every move I make is being watched." "Is it overwhelming?" I asked, moving to sit beside her. "Just a bit. I love performing, but this part, the fame, the constant questions, it's draining. Sometimes I miss the quiet moments before everything blew up," she admitted, rubbing her temples. "Maybe you need to take a step back. Prioritize some time for yourself," I suggested gently. "I can't. I need to keep up the momentum," she shot back, her frustration evident. "If I slow down now, what if they forget about me?" "Mel, they won't forget about you. You're talented, and you've made an impression. But your mental health matters too. You can't keep going like this without a break," I urged. She sighed, looking away as if wrestling with the truth of my words. "You're right. I just feel trapped between wanting to succeed and wanting to be myself." After a long pause, she finally nodded. "Maybe I can take a weekend off. Just us, somewhere quiet." "Now that's a plan," I smiled, relief washing over me. "Let's get out of the city for a bit." We decided on a small cabin by the lake, a place where we could unwind and reconnect away from the chaos. As we drove there, the scenery shifted from concrete to lush greenery, and I could feel the tension in Mel's shoulders slowly easing. Arriving at the cabin, we were greeted by the serene sounds of nature. The air was fresh, and the lake shimmered under the sun. I watched as Mel took a deep breath, her eyes closing momentarily as she soaked in the tranquility. "This is perfect," she said, a genuine smile breaking across her face. We spent the next few days hiking, cooking together, and simply enjoying each other's company. For the first time in weeks, I saw her laughter come easily, her worries temporarily forgotten. One evening, we sat by the lake, the sunset painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. "Do you remember the first time we came here?" she asked, nostalgia lacing her voice. Everything felt so simple then. I do. We had no idea what was ahead, did we? I replied, squeezing her hand. No, we didn't. But I'm grateful for every moment, even the tough ones, she said, her expression turning serious. I think I needed this time to reflect. I'm glad we're here. It's easy to lose sight of what truly matters when everything gets chaotic, I said, my heart swelling with affection. As we talked, Mel opened up about her fears and dreams, her voice steady as she articulated the pressure she felt. I want to keep growing as an actress, but I don't want to lose who I am in the process, she said, determination shining in her eyes. You won't. You're too grounded for that. Just remember to set boundaries. You can have both success and authenticity, I reassured her. The next day, we decided to take a break from our phones and the outside world. We went for a hike, exploring the forest trails and breathing in the crisp air. The connection we felt was palpable, and I cherished the quiet moments when words weren't necessary. On our last night, we built a fire outside, the crackling flames casting a warm glow around us. Mel leaned against me, her head resting on my shoulder as we watched the stars begin to twinkle in the night sky. This trip has reminded me of what's really important, she said softly. I want to carry this feeling with me. Even when I go back to the theater. You can. Just hold on to this moment and know that it's okay to step back when you need to, I replied, wrapping my arm around her. As the fire dwindled, Mel took a deep breath, her expression resolute. I'm ready to face whatever comes next. With you by my side, I feel like I can handle anything. Always, Mel. We're in this together, I promised, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them as a team. The following morning, we packed up our things and headed back to the city. Renewed and ready to tackle the next chapter of our lives. Mel's journey was far from over, but she now had a clearer vision of who she wanted to be, both on and off the stage. And for me, supporting her through every step was the greatest adventure of all. Returning to the city after our refreshing getaway, I noticed a distinct change in Mel. She carried herself with newfound confidence, a lightness that seemed to chase away the shadows of doubt that had previously clouded her. The bustle of the city felt different too. Instead of overwhelming her, it appeared to invigorate her. On the day of her next performance, I could see the excitement bubbling within her. As she prepared backstage, the energy was palpable, and her castmates buzzed with enthusiasm. Tonight's going to be amazing, I said, watching her apply her makeup, focused and determined. I can feel it, she replied, glancing at me with a smile. I'm ready to take on the world. As the lights dimmed and the curtain rose, I could see the transformation. Mel stepped onto the stage with grace, her presence commanding the room. The audience was captivated, and I could feel their collective breath held as she delivered her lines with poise. It was a stark contrast to the anxious performer I had seen weeks before. However, as the performance progressed, I noticed something unsettling. A familiar face in the audience, Jason, the actor Mel had been involved with before our relationship, sat among the guests. He watched her intently, and I could sense a tension growing in the air. Mel caught sight of him briefly during a scene, and I watched her momentarily falter. It was as if a shadow had crossed her vibrant energy. She recovered quickly, but I could tell it weighed on her. After the show, as the applause erupted, I rushed to meet her backstage. You were incredible, I exclaimed, but her smile seemed forced. Thanks, she said, but her eyes flicked back to the audience, where Jason was still lingering. Did you see him? I did. What's going on in your head? I asked, concern flooding my voice. I don't know. It's just complicated, she admitted, her expression tightening. I thought I was over that, but seeing him again, it's like all those old insecurities resurfaced. Mel, you've grown so much since then. Don't let him take away your shine, I urged, wanting to shield her from the past. I know. It's just hard not to compare myself, she said, biting her lip. What if he thinks I'm not good enough now? Stop it right there. You are more than enough. You've proven that, both to yourself and everyone who loves you, I reassured her. She nodded, but I could see the internal struggle in her eyes. I just wish I could shake off this feeling. After the performance, we attended a small after-party to celebrate with the cast. The atmosphere was lively, laughter filling the room, but Mel seemed distant. I watched as she moved through the crowd, engaging with others, but every so often, her gaze would drift toward Jason, who was chatting animatedly with some guests. Finally, unable to bear the tension, I pulled her aside. Mel, let's talk. I'm fine, she insisted, but the strain in her voice was evident. No, you're not. I can see it. What do you want to do? I asked, my heart aching for her. I don't know. I want to enjoy tonight, but I can't seem to escape this weight, she confessed, frustration evident in her voice. Then let's step outside for a minute. Just breathe, I suggested, leading her to a quieter corner. Once outside, the cool air enveloped us. And I watched as Mel inhaled deeply, letting the moment settle. I hate feeling like this, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought I was past it. Feelings don't always work in neat little packages. You're allowed to feel unsettled, I said, placing my hand on her back, hoping to offer comfort. But remember, you're not that same person anymore. You've accomplished so much. I know you're right. It's just hard to keep that perspective when I see him, she admitted. Looking up at the stars. Let's make a pact. Whenever you feel those insecurities creeping in, remember why you're here and how far you've come. And I'll be right here to remind you, I said, wanting to solidify our bond in that moment. I'd like that, she smiled softly, her eyes brightening. Thank you for always being my anchor. We rejoined the party, and while Mel still glanced Jason's way occasionally, her demeanor began to shift. With each laugh and cheer from her castmates, she allowed herself to relax and enjoy the celebration. As the night wore on, I realized that while the past might linger in the background, it no longer defined her. With each step she took on stage and in life, Mel was forging her own path, one that I was honored to walk alongside her. When we finally left the party, the city streets sparkled with life. Mel turned to me, her eyes shining with determination. I won't let anyone dictate my worth. Not anymore, she declared. I believe you. You're unstoppable, I said, wrapping my arm around her as we strolled under the stars. Together, we embraced the journey ahead, ready to face whatever challenges lay before us, stronger than ever. In the days that followed the after-party, Mel seemed to regain her footing. She was more focused during rehearsals, her laughter filling the rehearsal room, echoing off the walls. Yet, I could sense a lingering tension, especially when she was alone with her thoughts. The specter of Jason still hovered in the background, and I knew that while she had made progress, she wasn't entirely free from its grip. One afternoon, as she prepared for another performance, she received a message that sent a ripple of anxiety through her. It was from Jason, requesting to meet for coffee to talk. I watched her expression change from surprise to apprehension as she read the message. Mel, what are you going to do? I asked, concern lacing my voice. I don't know. Part of me wants to tell him to stay away, but another part is curious about what he wants, she replied, biting her lip. Do you think it's worth meeting him? I probed, wanting to understand her feelings. I don't know. Maybe it's closure? Or maybe it's a mistake. I need to think about it, she admitted, her voice wavering. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. I wanted Mel to move forward, not backward. Just remember what we talked about, I said softly. You've come so far, and you deserve to protect your peace. I know, Tom. I'll be careful, she reassured me, but I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. The next day, she decided to meet Jason. As she got ready, I tried to remain supportive, though a pit formed in my stomach. You'll be okay. Just trust your instincts, I said, squeezing her hand before she left. I'll text you right after, she promised, her smile faltering slightly as she stepped out the door. I spent the next hour pacing our apartment, my mind racing with possibilities. What could they possibly discuss? Would she feel tempted to revisit the past? I tried to focus on work, but my thoughts kept drifting back to her. Finally, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Mel. Can we talk? I'm on my way home. My heart raced. I could hear the weight of her words even through the screen. When she walked through the door, her expression was a mix of relief and confusion. Hey, she said, her voice steady but her eyes betraying her emotions. Hey, how did it go? I asked, my heart pounding in anticipation. I don't even know where to start, she said, taking a deep breath. He was different. He seemed genuinely sorry for how things ended between us. I felt a wave of protectiveness wash over me. What did he say? He talked about how he's been working on himself, trying to figure out his own issues. He said he regrets how things turned out, she explained, her gaze shifting to the floor. Did you feel anything for him? I asked gently, wanting her to be honest. Not really. I thought I might, but seeing him just reminded me of everything I've been through. I realized how much I've grown since then, she said, a hint of pride creeping into her voice. Then why do you look so troubled? I pressed, noticing the lingering heaviness in her demeanor. I don't know. I guess it's just hard to reconcile that past version of myself with who I am now. It feels surreal, she admitted, her fingers brushing against her temples. Mel, it's okay to feel mixed emotions. You're processing a lot, I said, stepping closer. What matters is that you chose to face it. Yeah, but part of me wonders if I should have just shut the door completely. It feels unfinished, she said, her eyes clouded with uncertainty. I took her hands in mine. You don't owe him anything. Closure is what you make of it. You've moved on for a reason. I know, but I keep thinking about the what ifs. What if I hadn't left things the way I did? She said, frustration creeping into her voice. Those thoughts will fade with time. You're not responsible for his growth or feelings, I reminded her firmly. She nodded slowly, processing my words. I guess it just feels weird to confront that part of my life again. Think of it this way, you confronted it and emerged stronger. That's the real victory, I said, trying to instill confidence in her. After a moment of silence, she looked up at me, her expression softening. You're right. Thank you for always being here for me. I don't know what I'd do without you, she said, gratitude shining in her eyes. I'll always be here, Mel. No matter what, I promised, pulling her into an embrace. As she melted into my arms, I felt the tension begin to ease. She was on a journey, and while the past would always be a part of her story, she was writing her own narrative now. Together, we would face whatever came next, and I knew that our bond would only grow stronger as we navigated the complexities of love, ambition, and self-discovery.